Welcome to the Pioneers in Pixels audio podcast, hosted by Sanjay K Khetarpaal, CEO of Marketing Markers, a digital marketing agency. Here we have discussions with some of the leading attorneys. Disclaimer: the podcast is for educational purposes. Please reach out to attorneys for legal advice.
Hello, everyone. This is Sanjay K Khetarpaal, and this is a podcast where I talk to the pioneers, the attorneys, the best in their fields, to talk about their experiences, their knowledge. They educate you here. Today, I have Scott with me, Scott Kaplan. Hey, Scott, welcome.
Hi, Sanjay. How are you doing today?
Absolutely great. Thank you for asking me. Scott, we're going to start getting into the details, but before we do that, I would like to know more about you, who you are, what you do, why you do what you do. Just wanted to understand your story better.
Okay. Well, I'm a licensed attorney in good standing in the state of New Jersey. I've been practicing law since 1970. I grew up in Trenton, a product of the Trenton Public Schools, and went to NYU in college and got out of college and worked for a couple of years and decided I wanted to go back to school, to law school specifically, because mom and dad were both real estate brokers, and I had been inundated with real estate information since I can't even remember how far back. I had gotten interested in the law through real estate and real estate matters. And I went back to law school while I was a county employee. I worked my way through law school as a county employee at Mercer County, writing grants. And I went back at night for 4 years and summers, and graduated successfully. I couldn't believe I got that far, but I did. I managed to graduate and decided to take the bar back in after graduation in 1977, and didn't have a lot of time to study, but successfully passed the bar. And I've been working as an attorney since then. And I have acquired some expertise in real estate matters, and I got into bankruptcy through real estate matters that were difficult problems that I confronted. And I found that I could get real estate closings done in Chapter 13 bankruptcies, which are wage earner and clerical plans, whereby I could save a person's house. They would come to me for fear of losing their homes because they had lost their jobs and had fallen behind in payments and were getting foreclosed. And I enabled them to retain their homes. And if they wanted to sell it, and in this case, I got interested in helping them sell their property, and I was able to help them sell their property and move on to other states in those early cases and other places. And successfully get rid of judgments and all kinds of title problems in that bankruptcy by filing a motion to sell free and clear of all liens and encumbrances pursuant to Code Section 363. And so I learned about bankruptcy through real estate, and then I cultivated a bankruptcy practice, and I've since, way back, done about 11,000 plus real estate closings and thousands of bankruptcies.
That is incredible. Incredible. Wow. This is great introduction. I love it. So let's get more information on the bankruptcy, since you mentioned about that. What are the common misconceptions about filing for bankruptcy? People say, "No, I don't want to do that," or this is going to hurt me. What kind of misconception you face when people are coming to you, they reach out to you scared?
There's a general aversion to filing for bankruptcy. If people are hardworking people and they recognize the merits of being creditworthy, they have fear and trepidation and concern about that. And I understand that completely. Bankruptcy is not the first course of action. Bankruptcy is the last card you play. And that's what I tell my clients. If there's a way to avoid it, you try. Try that first. And your fallback, your fail-safe is having to file for bankruptcy. And that could be in the context of the possibility of losing your home as an individual, or in the context of a business, the possibility of having tax levies particularly state sales tax levies for businesses that are behind on them, locked down by the state. You could file for a Chapter 11 reorganization and put together a plan so that you can continue to maintain the business and operate it while you're dealing with these problems in the context of a business bankruptcy, a business reorganization, a Chapter 11, which I've also done and continue to do. And there's, to address the question you asked, there's an aversion, but again, the last thing you do is to play the bankruptcy card, not the first.
That's not the first card. So I think you mentioned a couple of things, like you mentioned Chapter 13, Chapter 11. So let's take a step back and say, just explain a little bit more about Chapter 7, Chapter 11, Chapter 13. What are these different type of bankruptcies?
Okay.
Who filing it? What situation it is? Just to get a hold of these things. These things that we've heard a lot, but I don't know how much certainly about this thing.
For example, a client comes to me and they have had their wages garnished, but they don't have any real estate and they have a lot of credit card debt. And they say, my wages are garnished. I now have less income to pay the debts that I have. What do I do? What are my alternatives? And my business philosophy is that my job is to explain one's alternatives and to let the client determine what the best course of action is for them, because it's about them and what's best for their family, not me. And that's of paramount importance. You have to put the client's interest first. And what I try to do is to give a client what their viable alternatives are and let them choose what their proper course of action is for them. So it's a very subjective issue. And Chapter 7 is a liquidation. So that client that comes to me with the wage garnishment says, what do I do? Well, I say, you can do nothing and fall deeper into debt, or you can file for a Chapter 7, which is a liquidation. At a liquidation, they say, well, what do I lose? Can I keep what I own? I say, well, it depends. In a liquidation, in all bankruptcies, and for individuals, there are exemptions. For example, if you have real estate, and in this case, where there's the wage garnishment and there's this debt, the real estate, you get to keep the $27,900 per individual that owns that real estate. For a car, it's a little less than $4,000 exemption. There's exemptions for jewelry, for clothing, for electronics. For a simple Chapter 7, most people get to keep everything they own and get rid of all those debts, because you can discharge everything in all bankruptcies, and it's a little different at Chapter 13, that are not educational loans, alimony support, educational loans, and taxes. Those are the things you generally cannot discharge, unless in certain cases you can discharge taxes if the returns have been filed timely and no collection efforts have been made in 3 years. You can discharge taxes. And now in educational loans, there's a way to attempt to not only get forbearance, but to discharge those loans for purposes of hardship. I don't want to get off on tangents, but getting back to the Chapter 7. So a Chapter 7 is this liquidation that you file, takes 90 days from filing to discharge generally, if there are no complications. And that person that came to me when I filed a bankruptcy, the instant you file under Code Section 362A, that's called the automatic stay, all collection efforts stop. Any money that was garnished within 90 days gets returned. And that person discharges all their debts and gets a fresh start. That's the purpose of a bankruptcy, to enable an individual or business to get a fresh start. That's a chapter, simply Chapter 7 liquidation. Then there's a Chapter 13, which is a wage earner clerical plan, whereby if an individual is behind on house payments or mortgage payments or car payments, for example, because they lost their job and then they've gotten back into employment and they now have income to pay, we can put together a plan specifically structured for them, a very subjective thing, to pay the arrearages and for the car, the mortgage, and taxes. For example, if there are taxes outstanding or other debts that they're behind on, that are secured and priority, and get rid of their unsecured debts if they have credit card debts. I mean, it depends upon the facts of a particular case, but you can do all kinds of things. It's very flexible. You've got under a Chapter 13, you've got to pay a payment to a trustee for a minimum of 36 months to a maximum of 60 months. And you have to pay the difference between your monthly income and your necessary expenses. And that difference represents your disposable income. And generally, it's that amount that you pay into the plan to the trustee. And hopefully the plan is structured properly such that that's the amount you pay for 36 to a maximum of 60 months. After that period of time, you get your discharge, your fresh start, and you've paid back the arrearages. Plus you can pay those arrearages in the plan, but you can make from the time you file the plan, the new payments as they come due for the car and or the mortgage, and you've done a viable reorganization personally. I mean, that's a very, very brief overview, but you can do all kinds of things, and it is very, very viable in that you can save your home, your car, and all the things you own, and continue to have a safety and shelter for your family. Chapter 12 is a little different, similar, but yet different in that you have to be a farmer or a professional fisherman to take advantage of that code section. And it's very specialized. And I generally refer my Chapter 12s out to an individual that concentrates more on those because it's so specialized. And then a Chapter 11, an individual can do a Chapter 11 if they don't qualify for a Chapter 13. A business can't do a Chapter 13, but a business can do a Chapter 11 reorganization. And if an individual has, under Code Section 109E, more than $1,300,000 roughly, the limit keeps going up, in secured debts, or more than $340,000 in unsecured debts, or again, the limit changes under Code Section 109 annually, they don't qualify for a Chapter 13, so they have to do an individual Chapter 11 and deal with their debts, and they can reorganize, and there is no fixed period of time within which you have to complete that plan. Could be hypothetically up to 10, 12, 15, 20 years or 30 years that you can put together a plan to pay back in a Chapter 11, but there's a lot more flexibility. However, the cost is much higher, and because the fees aren't generally set, although they're reviewable and have to be approved by bankruptcy courts in 7s, 13s, 12s, and 11s, they're not really set as strictly as they are in Chapter 13s. And again, it's much more expensive. But you can do things like deal with wage earners, taxes owed, or business taxes. And if you're being garnished or there are extra levies by taxing authorities, you can, again, do that Chapter 11, the business, and avoid being closed down and reorganize. And hypothetically, if that doesn't work, you convert to a Chapter 7 and the business is closed down. It's over, but you deal with these situations, and depending upon the facts as they arise and as they exist at the time of filing. And again, these are viable alternatives. I know that was a brief overview.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's very important to just get a high level stuff. I got a lot of questions on this one. I don't think whether we have time for that or not, but I'm going to ask whatever I can just to get a little bit of ideas, like few here or there questions. The first question which comes to my mind is that how does a bankruptcy affect an individual's or company's credit score?
Well, obviously, it's going to have an impact on an individual. My experience is, having done thousands of Chapter 7s, 13s, and a number of Chapter 11s, it's going to have an impact. It's going to stay in your credit report for 10 years. However, my experience is that after 2 years of getting a discharge in a Chapter 7, you reestablish your credit right away, and you can get a new mortgage or a piece of real estate. In a Chapter 13, after it's discharged, again, you get fresh starts. And in a Chapter 7, I'm sorry for jumping back, but you get credit offers right away. It's amazing. People are amazed because you have a fresh start. You get a clean slate, hopefully, and you're a good credit risk from the perspective of a creditor. And after a Chapter 13's over or a Chapter 11, once you get discharged. 2 years later, you can get a new mortgage to buy a property. And generally, 3 years, you can get conventional financing.
That's pretty awesome.
In terms of cars, you can get discharged at a 7 and get a new car right away. It's amazing. The rate's higher initially for a year or two, but if you refinance, you can come down and get conventional market rates for car loans immediately thereafter. So you can reestablish quite quickly. And
that's good. You're not carrying that baggage along with you. That kind of a load off for a lot of people who are trying to, like, I don't want to do that. But here's one more thing. I mean, so there has to be some, like, okay, before you said that bankruptcy is remember that you mentioned that bankruptcy should be your last option, a fallback or something, that if nothing else works. So what's your advice you will give to someone to avoid the path of bankruptcy, really?
Well, you want to try to work out, to avoid bankruptcy, you want to stay out of accruing a lot of debt, obviously, that exceeds your ability to pay. Because if you don't have the ability to pay, then you're looking for trouble, to say.
Of course. So I saw that when I was going through your website, I saw that. So you help people to eliminate the credit card debt, medical bills, yes, civil judgments due to like kind of job loss or something, or illness or something like that.
Right.
Just want to understand that part of it, that what you do that way and how are you helping people. Give me some case studies if you have, or something to like. There's something like anchor on, saying that, oh, okay, I get it better. Just trying to get a better handle of what that is.
Well, in terms of reestablishing your credit, going through a bankruptcy or avoiding a bankruptcy?
Well, so here's this. So if it's like avoiding a bankruptcy. So
okay, well, people fall into a problem associated with, they hear these ads about avoiding bankruptcy and how they can avoid bankruptcy and contact these credit companies to do what they call a debtor's composition, where they take all their credit cards and they attempt to work out payments that are compromised payments, and then pay that.
Scott, one thing, Scott, thanks for letting me interrupt you. What I was trying to reach to the point was saying that there could be debts getting piled up because you lost a job. There was a huge medical bill came from somewhere, and there was an illness there somewhere, or reduced income or somewhere, and now the debts are increasing. It's not that somebody's trying to like create the debt and they're doing some wrong things. It just happens.
Right.
So try to go that path, because it happens. I mean, people get into trouble and then like, hey, I don't want to go through bankruptcy. Can I avoid it? I was going to that path. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, it's perfectly all right. Well, I have a perfect example. Mm-hmm. Somebody accrued a lot of motor vehicle surcharges, and they lost their job as a consequence. Yeah. And they fell behind on their debts because their income stopped. Their unemployment wasn't enough to pay their debts.
Right.
And everything was in jeopardy suddenly. Well, they come to me and they say, can you help me? And I say, yes, because number one, I can get rid of motor vehicle surcharges in a Chapter 13 or a Chapter 7, get them their license back, as long as there were no motor vehicle accidents that had personal injuries that resulted in the surcharge being issued and the judgment for personal injury. I can get rid of those motor vehicle surcharges and get them back on the road right away, so they get their job back or new employment. In fact, I used to advertise years ago in the Asbury Park Press and the Home Ledger in Essex County or wherever, and all around, that I can help people get back on the road if they've accrued motor vehicle surcharges. And I was the first person I understand to do that in the state years back. And I got rid of up to almost $40,000 in surcharges and got somebody back on the road right away. And they're doing quite well. That's my understanding. So that's a perfect example of being able to file a Chapter 7, get back on the road, get rid of almost $40,000 in motor vehicle surcharges and other debts, and get a fresh start and change their life in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. So that's sorry. I was going to say that. So when what should someone expect when they're going through the bankruptcy process? See, now that the bankruptcy happened, it's going to happen, and people are like, oh shit, I'm going to file for bankruptcy now. What they should expect? Like now they go, and I'm sure that you normally walk people through that when they're going through that. I just want to hear from a high level that what they should expect when they're going through it.
All right. Well, in a bankruptcy, what if they go bankrupt, and they're not necessarily going to lose a home in a bankruptcy if the bankruptcy plan is structured, particularly in a Chapter 13 or a Chapter 11, and even in a Chapter 7, if they don't have that much equity, they can keep their homes and their other assets, but they're not going to be able to get new credit for a while. And some people say, well, I need a credit card. I need to have access because I need to rent cars and things like that. Well, you may have to get, after a bankruptcy is filed, any pre-petition debts are subject to the bankruptcy. Post-petition debts that are not. So you may have to get a secured credit card for a while to reestablish your credit and to have the ability to rent a car, or alternatively, they're going to have to get a debit card from their bank account to be able to rent cars and utilize credit, not really credit, their own funds from their bank accounts. So that is a reality that has to be dealt with.
They're actually, in a way, they're trying to build their credit, recover or build their credit again. This. Yeah, exactly.
After they get discharged, they can get that new car loan, or they can get a secured credit card and reestablish their credit. They put up a couple $100 for Capital One or a federal credit union, and they diligently pay the bills as they come due per month for a year or two, and they get their security back, and they get increased credit limits. They've reestablished credit right away, and it's people are amazed at how quickly that happens, and credit card offers are made to them after they get that bankruptcy discharge. So that you have to anticipate.
Yep. That's a good thing. One more thing is the pandemic happened, and the pandemic has changed so much things. Everything has changed. Did you see a surge in bankruptcy filings and stuff like that? I'm sure everybody has seen that, but did you see that too? And what are these type of companies all kind of companies, I guess?
During the pandemic, you saw a lull in bankruptcies because all debt collectors were forgiving or forbearing when collecting. Even landlords weren't able to collect rents, and tenants were not paying. But now that that's over and all that forbearance
everything is coming back.
Everything is coming back. Bankruptcy filings are increasing daily.
Oh my God. And that's the reason the insurance was increasing. Insurance is also kind of going crazy because everybody's coming back. They're forgiving, and now it's coming back. It's guys, you have to pay higher now.
Lots of ripple effects.
Yeah, it is.
Along with inflation generally.
Yeah, exactly. So the pandemic has also done one more thing. That is the technology changes, the process changes, and a lot of things have changed along with that. How technology has impacted you in terms of hey, the courts are not open. What do I do? And people are coming. So there are a lot of things changing. Technology is taking a decade leap in 1 or 2 years. So
it's changed everything. You have to have the bankruptcy software to do the right job for your clients. So there are these software fees you have to incur, needless to say, and you've got to have the right tools to do the job properly, like any other craftsman or person offering services. And I have that, obviously. And I deal with the electronic filings because it's all electronic filing today through public access to courts electronic records. PACER is the acronym. Everything goes through PACER. You have to file the petitions that way. You have to file all pleadings that way. And you hold your meetings with trustees via Zoom these days. In fact, I had 2 yesterday and 1 today via Zoom. So as a consequence of that, lots of out-of-state firms that may have a guy licensed to do business in New Jersey and practice law are now reaching out all over the country to compete with guys like me that just practice in New Jersey. And so it expands the scope of their ability to perform services to clients. And certainly that has an impact. But I've been blessed. I get lots of referrals through my networking group, which is fantastic. And other people with whom I've dealt for years, other attorneys that don't do what I do. And they've had and continue to have enough faith in me to refer their clients because they don't do bankruptcies to get that job done for them and to make them look good. And that's what I try to do.
That's kind of your niche. That's one. I'm not going to say that's a weird question, but maybe somebody would be thinking, how frequently an individual can file for bankruptcy under different chapters?
Okay, well, That's an interesting question that comes up on repeat filers, and there are a number. I've done 3 bankruptcies for one person or a couple more people over the years because I've been practicing since 19. Well, you can file for bankruptcy as much as you'd like. The problem is you may not succeed, or they may be dismissed for under Code Section 105 for bad faith filing. But you can file for a Chapter 7 once every 8 years and 1 day after you get a discharge, or after you've gotten a bankruptcy discharge in a Chapter 7 or 13. You can file a Chapter 13 4 years and a day after you get that discharge.
Wow.
For Chapter 13. And if you file for a Chapter 7 and you've gotten the discharge, you're a little short of that 8 years and a day, you can, in the meantime, file a Chapter 13 and buy some time until you've gotten through your 8 years and 1 day, and you can dismiss your 13 because that's the only bankruptcy you can voluntarily dismiss, and then file a Chapter 7 and get a Chapter 7 discharge when you qualify after 8 years and a day. So there's all kinds of strategies you can adopt, depending upon your situation.
Yeah. Is the bankruptcy process differ when you have a small businesses or a restaurants or versus a medium-sized business or a large business? Is it differ? The process is differ? Okay.
Yes. I've had clients come to me after having worked with other attorneys who didn't know bankruptcy and they have a business. And the reason they were filing for a bankruptcy is because they had that business debt, and they thought because they had an LLC and they were the sole member of the LLC that they could file individually and have that LLC's debts covered and stop any debts that were or executions levies against that LLC, and they were wrong. I'm not going to allege anybody committed malpractice, but it was improper. And so I've had to file a Chapter 11 for the LLC to get that reorganized, and that's how that plays out. And it's much more expensive. But being in an LLC or a corporation, it's much more expensive and complex to do Chapter 11s, to do not Chapter 7s for those businesses, because that's a liquidation process, and it's similar to the individual process, and it's not as expensive as a Chapter 11. But if you want to reorganize, if you want to stay in business, you've got to reorganize through Chapter 11. And there are different subsections in Chapter 11 that you can avail yourself of, depending upon the situation of that business. There's a single asset real estate case, wherein you only have 90 days within which to file a plan, or a small business reorganization where you're under a certain debt limit. And forgive me for not remembering the exact number, but it's around less than $3 million in debts, or a subsection 5, Chapter 11, where it's similar to a 13 in certain respects, and you're under a debt limit, and it's similar to a 13, and it's relatively new, but it's still a Chapter 11 reorganization for an LLC or a corporation. And the filing fee, for example, for a Chapter 11 is $1,787, whereas for a 13, it's only $313, and for a 7, it's $328. Big difference in just the filing fees. And oftentimes you have Chapter 11s for the principal business and its subsidiaries. You need a different Chapter 11 for each of those entities. And you can deal with them administratively. You can consolidate them substantively or administratively and run them all as one. But it's just a lot more complex.
It is.
And expensive.
Of course. Yeah. So are there any, or how do recent changes in the bankruptcy laws are affecting the filer? Are there any recent changes you wanted to highlight them and they're affecting the filers?
Well, there are different rule changes all the time. There are, but the principal change happened in 2005 when they changed from the old code to the new one. The new code requires an individual, as a condition precedent to filing any individual bankruptcy, to get a credit counseling certification, which has to be filed along with the bankruptcy petition. It's credit counseling you have to get. It costs my clients about $20, and they have to go through this credit counseling online and get the certificate that I need to file along with the bankruptcy petition, and that's a condition precedent to be able to continue to have the filing to be viable. And that was most of the changes happened in 2005. But the subsection 5 in the Chapter 11 happened a couple of years ago, and that's a relatively new procedure that, in the context and realm of Chapter 11, that makes it a lot simpler and, needless to say, less expensive, although it's still expensive. And a trustee gets appointed for the subchapter 5, similar to Chapter 13, and a lot more reporting requirements in a Chapter 11. But those are changes that happened fairly recently as compared to the other chapters, which haven't changed since 2005.
That's good to know. Good to know. So another question, because I'm a marketing guy, I'm going to ask some question related to marketing too. So how does marketing or education or all these things or putting self out in the digital marketing world, do you do that? Does it help you? What are your thoughts on that? Go ahead, Tilly.
I'm sorry. The way I advertise is I don't advertise. I have my network group, my BNI group, which is a fantastic group that I rely on for my advertising. And thankfully, they have enough confidence in me to refer business people that they meet in need of services I provide. And I've been blessed with business from the great people in my group. And I get business from other attorneys that don't do what I do, and from my clients that I service properly and happily, so that they can say to their friends and people that they come in contact with who have similar circumstances that they faced past, hey, I got a guy who can help you that helped me. And I think you let him prove himself so that you can be happy as well and satisfied with the results you realize. Because I don't advertise otherwise, other than my website. But I don't advertise actively like I did years ago when there was no internet or a networking group. So
yeah, the yellow pages and all those paper.
Yeah, I used to do that, but I don't really do that anymore.
No, I don't think that's. I mean, in the digital world, that's different. There are the yellow pages and everything is on the internet now.
Yeah, again, I have to count my blessings that people
that's good.
Have enough faith in me to refer business to me, because a word of mouth referral is guaranteed business.
Oh yeah. A satisfied customer giving another referral is
absolutely
amazing. This is great information. I mean, I can go on and on. I have so many things to ask, but the time is limited. But here's the thing. I'm sure that the listeners are also have a lot of questions. So Scott, if you can share how can people reach out to you in case they have a question, consultations, like your phone number, your email, your website, if that would be really, really helpful.
Well, I'm a little bit unusual, perhaps not these days, but I allow access to me via cell phone if my clients really need me.
Also,
my law office is located at 5 South Main Street in Allentown, New Jersey, and it's right across the street from the pharmacy, and that's where I've been in Allentown since 2008. And it's been a good location for me. And I can meet people on weekends and evenings if I have to. And my phone number is area code 609-259-1112. It's my law office. And if you can leave a message there. And I have my cell phone number I give out, which is 609-213-12. And if I'm not able to answer the phone, if someone leaves a message, I will get back to them. So I am fairly accessible.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving your cell number, personal cell number. I mean, like, this is like amazing.
It's a little different, but I pride myself on accessibility. That's why I still have my first client. He's been with me. He was my high school buddy. And he morphed into a very successful contractor and business person and landlord and entrepreneur. And he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. We talk all the time. He's my first client. He's still my client. And other people that I've grown up with, literally people that I was in nursery school with who know me and continue to know me and have enough faith in me, knowing me all my life, to let me handle their business. I take great pride in that. And I am blessed with their favor and their business. And
this is awesome.
Those are blessings.
Oh, these are really great examples. I mean, like, kind of work you perform and the trust they have on you is amazing. It's amazing. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for your time today. I really, really appreciate your time, and this information is valuable. And again, if for the listeners, if they wanted to, these are all for education purposes. And if you wanted to seek legal advice, you should directly contact Scott. He has mentioned all the details. And thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Scott.
Sanjay, thank you for the opportunity to discuss these matters with you. I sincerely appreciate that.
That too. Thank you so much, Scott.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Pioneers in Pixels. We hope the discussion was enlightening and informative, giving you a clearer insight into the complexities. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and never miss an episode. Join host Sanjay K Khetarpaal next time for more insights and interviews with leading legal experts. Until then, stay informed and empowered. This has been Pioneers in Pixels. Thank you for listening and have a great day.